You will know that you are serving the agenda of your body primarily if you are doing what you're doing for a living in order to survive. Because the agenda of your body is survival. Its job, its purpose, is to do what it needs to do to guarantee your survival. So if what you're doing for a living, if you please, or what you're doing with the days and times of your life is primarily, not exclusively perhaps, but primarily done in order to assure your survival, that's a sign that you have served the agenda of your body. Primarily. The fascinating part about that is your survival is guaranteed. You cannot not survive, both in this form, in your present form, and in all the other forms that life offers you the opportunity to take. So if you're doing what you do with your life in order to survive, you're cheating yourself. It seems to me. You will know that you're serving the agenda of your mind if the largest part of your life has to do with intellectual pursuits to the exclusion virtually of any other experience or activity. And if you tend to reason your way through your whole life, making sure that the choices you make are rational. There's nothing more boring, by the way, than a series of rational choices. So I often suggest to people, be irrational. Do something totally irrational, at least once a week. Because if you're going to just live rationally, and do things that only make rational sense, you are going to, I think, find the scope and the texture of your life experience to be extremely limited, because your mind's idea of what is rational is extraordinarily limited. So you have to do something irrational, something totally nuts, something crazy, like maybe run for president or something like that. Something totally, to be totally nuts. To really enjoy, that is, put joy into, to enjoy your life, to enliven and enjoy your experience. But even those decisions would not be made simply to enjoy your life, but the reason that you enjoy life when you do those kinds of things is because you start getting closer and closer to your main reason for being here, to your, as the French would say, raison d'être. The French don't care what they do as long as they pronounce it properly. I assume I pronounced that reasonably well. Raison d'être. Reason for being. Reason for being. Again, I repeat, most people do not know their reason for being, so they imagine that it's all this other stuff they're doing. When you finally discover what your real reason for being is, you have two experiences at once, if you're anything like me. If you're anything like me, the two experiences you have is, one, you realize how many years you've I want to say almost wasted, although that's not true in the largest sense. But how it seems as if you've wasted many of your years doing things that simply have nothing to do with your soul's agenda. However, in the strictest sense, it's not possible to waste even a moment of your life, because everything you've ever said, done, or chosen has brought you to this time and place. So every step in life is a step in the right direction. By the way, put that on your mirror in lipstick. Every step in life is a step in the right direction. It is impossible for you to take a wrong step. or as God said to me in Conversations with God, much to my astonishment when I first heard it, you cannot make a mistake. You can only do things that you imagine to be a mistake because they did not produce the outcome that you expected or hoped or wanted them to produce. But that doesn't make them a mistake by the definition of the soul. Every step is a step in the right direction. There's only one way that you can go, and that's toward a higher and higher awareness of yourself and a grander and grander experience of who you really are. So it's impossible for you to make a mistake, given that that is what's occurring. However, in the limited human understanding of the word, I had the experience that I had wasted many, many years. When I finally understood what the purpose of life was, generically and specific to me, because I discovered that it had nothing to do with hardly anything that I was doing. It had nothing to do with my career. It had nothing to do with my romantic life. It had nothing to do with my health. It had nothing to do with my financial life. It had nothing to do with hardly anything that I was up to in the direct sense. It had implications for all of those, but it had nothing directly to do with all of those. So what did it have to do with? I have been reliably informed that the purpose of life, generically, is to provide that which life is, which I'm going to use the word God to describe, is to provide the essential essence, that which life is, an opportunity to express and experience itself fully, thus to know itself in its own experience. So, in a single sentence, life is God's device through which divinity seeks to know itself experientially and not simply conceptually. That which is understood fully what it is conceptually. It understood itself to be everything, all possibilities, and thus to be magnificent, glorious, wondrous, and all the other things we imagine divinity to be. All loving, all powerful, all knowing, all wise. It understood itself to be that. Just as you could understand yourself to be totally loving, totally wise, totally powerful. But if you can't experience that, knowing yourself to be that is almost, in a sense, almost frustrating. Because you can know yourself to be, all these things, but if you can't express it, that is, push it out, you can't experience yourself as that. Being that almost has no point. In fact, it doesn't have any point. So you will fight in your life to devise ways to express what you know yourself to be, because you are an aspect of divinity, and that is exactly what God has done through the creation of life itself. Creating life in its multiplicity of forms, in its unlimited multiplicity of forms, that it might know itself in totality, know every aspect of itself, know its beauty, its power, its glory, its wisdom, its clarity, its lovingness, its everything. So then we see that life is God's device with which to know itself in its own experience. As human beings, we get to decide then, if indeed we embrace that notion that we are, along with everything else in life, God's device with which to know itself experientially, we then get to decide if we embrace such a notion. By the way, the embracing of such a notion is not a small thing. That in itself, before we even get on to how we do that, that in itself is a huge life decision. It's like a huge life decision to say to oneself, you know, I am God's device through which divinity gets to know itself in its experience, in, as, and through me. That's not a small choice that one makes. In fact, frankly, I'm going to suggest that it is the biggest choice and the biggest decision you'll ever make in your life. Far bigger than who am I going to marry, or where will I live, or what will be my job, my career, or what will I do. I mean, it's the biggest single decision you'll ever make in your life, because it sets the tone for every other choice and decision you will ever make.